Tantor Audio presents Rise Again, Below Zero by Ben Tripp. Narrated by Kirsten Potter. He could hear its garments rustling in the leaves, and every breath of wind came laden with that last low cry. If he stopped, it did the same. If he ran, it followed, not running too. That would have been a relief. But like a corpse endowed with the mere machinery of life, and borne on one slow, melancholy wind that never rose or fell. Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist. Questi non hanno speranza di morte. These have no hope of death. Dante Alighieri, Divina Commedia. Prologue. The Silent Kid testifies. Everybody knows you don't get near the zeros, 'cause near the zeros is near the death. We feared 'em, but we knowed 'em well, like olden-time sailors gone to sea but dunno how to swim. The danger all around, and them in their wooden ships, like us in our caravan. Feared 'em or freed 'em, goes the saying. I'm telling this story about Danny, who's known round the world for her daring exploits against the zeros, because nobody writes anything down anymore, and what she done changed everything towards man again from when the zeros ruled the world. This story is important for that reason alone, but also because people think Danny is a legend, when she was just a human like you and me, only she was a special human who was not afraid to die. And I was lucky enough to know her. That is, Danny Adelman, or the zombie killer, or the leader of the tribe, and she know me as well, and treated me good when she could have killed me that first day, the day they found me bloody and dying. It was near 2 years since the world ended, and the zeros, or as you might call 'em, the zombies, or the undead, or the man-eaters, rise again and started their new world on the ruins of the old. As preachers say, all the sins of the world maketh the dumb clay of the dead bestir and rise again, and turn up on the living who asked for destruction on account of they don't listen to the word of the Lord. The Lord is always angry, always killing people for one thing or another, depending on the preacher's mood. You would have thought if the Lord was so disappointed with his creation, that being mankind, I mean, he would have just started over anew. But the Lord is a mean old son of a bitch. He wanted to keep some people alive so he could make 'em suffer. Danny, she fought against the preacher and the architect and saved me. Before that time I live in a suburb of a big city, Kansas City, in the great state of Kansas. Our house looked like every other house in the whole street, and the whole suburb, and probably the whole city for all I know. I didn't think about other places very often, or never, really. We went on vacation once or 2 times and seen other places, but they didn't seem all that different from Kansas City, except as might be they have some hills or mountains or maybe the ocean shore. On the day the world ended, I was playing in the yard of my house. I was probably too old to be playing with toys, but ashamed as I am to admit it, the truth must be said. I guess in the time before it was okay for a boy 7 years old to play with toys instead of real guns and knives, and especially slingshots. My toys were pretty good. They were mostly weapon kind of toys, but not dangerous because they were only fake. The guns had orange plastic nozzles on the ends and went baka 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 until the batteries died, or I left them outside overnight and they got rained on or the sprinklers watered them. I had also a rubber knife, not dangerous whatsoever, and many armed men in lifelike poses locked in combat with my toy dinosaurs. In the middle of the day, my mom come out and tell me there was some weird news on the TV, because this was when we still had TV, you understand, and could watch movies and shows, my favorites being the ones with soldiers fighting, any show as long as the soldiers was fighting, really. I liked violent shows. I am not ashamed to admit that. Now I don't like violent shows. Not even to think about them. The weird news was about people running and screaming everywhere in the world, but the news kept changing the subject, like they didn't want to talk about it at all. Problem was, there was so much news about it, only thing happening, really, except for 4th of July parades and warning people to be careful of fireworks, so they didn't blow off their hands or get blinded in their eyes. We didn't see anything wrong at first, Only some neighbors come out of their houses and looked around like you could check if the news was true just by going outside and looking down the street. Our neighbor, Mrs. Kirsten, said to my mom, "I am worried about what I seen on the news. Do you know a channel where they show what is happening? I can't find one." And my mom said, "No, I can't figure out why they don't just show us what is happening. I think it might be a terrorist attack." And Mrs. Kirsten put her hand over her mouth and said, "Oh, bite your tongue, Margaret. Please, God, don't let it be a terrorist attack." Do you think it might really be a terrorist attack? And right then our neighbor kid on the other side, my friend Jerry, he lighted a whole string of firecrackers, and they went pack-a-bang, and my mom and Mrs. Kirsten, both of them, jumped about 3 foot in the air and screamed. Anyway, my mom, she made me come inside the house, and I ate a snack. Last snack ever in my life. That was an ordinary snack, sitting at the counter between the living room and kitchen, and TV going, lights on, refrigerator humming, dishwasher washing dishes. Last normal day in the world, and I didn't know it at the time. I just eat my snack and wonder when I can go outside and play some more, 'cause I wanted to light firecrackers with Jerry. It was a good snack, though. It was string cheese. There isn't any string cheese anymore. Also crackers, grapes, and milk. It was 10 minutes after I was done, and Mom wanted me to stay inside, but I wanted to go out and play with Jerry, when the first crazy person come running down the street. It was like a siren on a fire truck in olden days. You know, when you hear a siren coming towards your house, and you don't know if it is coming to near your house, only it gets louder and louder, and then you start to think maybe it come to your block, and then maybe it come to your house. The crazy man was running and screaming, hands in the air, and he run right past our house. I run outside to see, and my mom, she was scared. She grabbed me and pulled me inside the house, and the man run past and fell down dead right in front of Jerry's house. I was jealous at the time, 'cause Jerry got the dead man in front of his house, and he, that is Jerry, would get on the news and be famous. But there was another crazy man coming down the street, and I thought maybe he'd die in front of my house. He didn't die. He kept running. I was watching from the living room window, and my mom was on the phone. We had television back then, and she was telling my dad, "Come home. I don't care where you are, just come home. Don't care if you're helping your friend get his vintage car ready for the 4th of July parade. Come home." And he said he would come home, but he never come home. Probably he died running and screaming. I'll never know. Lots more screaming people come running down our street, and even some of our neighbors, too, running with their hands up in the air. Mom locked the door, turned off the lights, and took me upstairs, and we hid in their bedroom and looked out the window at the crazy people running. Many of the people died in the street. One of them died right against our fence, and another crashed into the fence and went over the top and landed in my toy soldiers and lay still. That one was a lady, an old lady. She had an American flag shirt for the holiday. I saw when she died, she pooped a big shit in her pants, and I laughed, and my mom hit me on the head and said, "Don't be an animal. People are dying. This is no time for laughing." Jerry, my neighbor, come to our door and knock, and he was screaming his mom died, so my mom went down to let him in. I stayed upstairs to keep watching the spectacle of a world gone crazy out the window. But then my mom didn't come back upstairs, so I thought she was giving Jerry a snack, but she never come back upstairs. It was getting dark when I finally come downstairs, and the reason I didn't come down sooner was 'cause I was scared so much I didn't have the courage to come down. I guess I knew there was a problem, or my mom would have come back up the stairs with Jerry, but she didn't. After a while the screaming stopped, and only dead people were everywhere, not any living people I could see from the window. I come down and it was dark inside the house, and I felt like there were spiders crawling on my skin. My heart was hammering. I didn't find any sign of my mom or Jerry. I thought that maybe they went to Jerry's house, so I got a flashlight, even though it wasn't really dark outside yet, and I saw all the dead people everywhere. 1,000,000 dead people. Someone said later on there was 150,000 dead in the greater metropolitan area, including St. Louis. I gone over the fence between the houses because I was so scared of the dead lady on the lawn with the shit in her pants. I went into Jerry's house. The door was open. I went in and it was quiet in there. Quiet as the tomb, as Dad would have said.
I look around, but I was too scared to go upstairs, and it got dark, so I turned on the lights and was scared all night. I peed in my pants also, so it wasn't funny.
The next morning I went outside and the dead people was on their feet. Some survivors was looking for other survivors, so I called to them and they come to get me. I could tell they were alive because they could talk, and the dead people who got up again, they could not talk, nor hardly even walk or move around. The survivors just pushed the zombies out of the way. They were zombies, as you already know this, so I will call them zombies, even though we didn't know they were zombies yet. They pushed the zombies out of the way and come get me, and I cried, I admit it. I cried like a small baby, and a lady survivor, she stroked my heart and pressed my face to her bosom. She gave me a small dog, who became my best friend. We all got in a van and drove between the zombies, walking around like a video game. I don't remember when the zombies started biting all the people. I was sleeping in the van. I was tired from not sleeping all night. We stopped at a house, and the men went to see if there was a survivor. I was told that later.
A zombie bit one of the men, and blood went everywhere, and the zombies went crazy and bit everybody who was outside the van. We drove away very fast then, and after that more and more people got bitten on arms, legs, necks, ears, faces, or fingers. Every time we stopped, it seemed like somebody'd get another bite. There were so many zombies.
They seemed to come up out of the ground, or under every rock, or behind every tree and bush, and every time somebody got bitten, they'd turn into a zombie themselves, and so it got worser every day until there were no more survivors except me and 2 others in our group. We seen other groups too, but we kept to ourselves then until I was alone in the world. Maybe it were a mistake, and we should have gone for strength in numbers, but in light of what I seen after that, maybe our group did the right thing after all. Because the only creature worser and more cruel and violent and bloodthirsty than the zombie is man. Part 1. 1.
You have the right to remain silent. In fact, I prefer it. Anything you say would be held against you in a court of law, except there isn't one. You would have the right to speak to an attorney, but we don't have those either. There ain't shit except me. Do you understand? Danny Adelman had the man face down against the pavement on the side of the road, his hands bound across his spine with a plastic zip tie. Her attention was divided, but she'd gotten good at multitasking since things went bad.
The zeros were coming through the tall yellow grass, slow ones, moaners, dozens of them, drawn out into the open by the burning wreckage, preceded by their long, sobbing cries of hunger. "You can't kill me," he said. "You're a cop."
"I didn't say I was going to kill you," Danny replied. She knew where he got the idea. Her short-nosed shotgun was jammed up under his left ear. "I'm only judge and jury here, but the executioner is getting real close." She and the perpetrator had another minute at most. Then Danny was going to have to get to the Mustang Special Police Interceptor and bug out. The black smoke rising up out of the wreckage of the man's truck was shaped like a giant fist, with one finger pointing down at the scene of the action. The perp wasn't going to be any more ready to talk than he was now. Time to get down to business.
"Tell me something," Danny said.
"Fuck you," he answered. He was burly-shouldered, stinking of sweat, his lank hair clinging to his skin in oily strokes. There was a deep, unhealed gash across his forehead. With patience she did not feel, Danny said, "You tried to steal one of our children. Why?" The man barked a laugh. "You don't know? I guess not if you're coming from the West." He wrenched his face into a mirthless grimace, trying to smile despite the asphalt against his teeth. Danny thought about breaking his nose. "And you figure not telling me is going to be satisfaction enough for dying? Doesn't matter. You're going to kill me either way," he said. "Tell me what I want to know and you get your hands back," Danny said. "Even with that busted foot, you can probably make it out of here. Don't tell me, and I leave you just like you are. Maybe you can still get away, even with the handcuffs on. You could last for days." "Fuck you,"
the man repeated. "And if you say that just one more time, we move on to option 3. I break your other foot. You got 15 seconds.
The perp wasted 10 of them weighing the alternatives. Then he said, "I was trying to survive, okay? There's a bounty. 1 kid buys you passage to the safe place. Gotta be under 12. Lots of people are doing it. Parents are turning in their own."
"And what happens to the kids?" "They go somewhere else, an even safer place. I hear they're happy there." "Then why the hell didn't you just ask nicely?" Danny saw there were tears running out of the man's red eyes and dripping on the tar. "Because somebody stole my son," he said. "I was taking him there, and this biker gang showed up, called the Vandal Reapers, and now he's gone." The man sobbed. Danny heard the grief, the real agony in his chest, and she knew he was telling the truth. For a few seconds she listened to the man's sorrow hacking out of his chest, but the muzzle of her shotgun never wavered, and she did not relieve the weight of her knee upon his back. The nearest of the Zeros was within 50 yards by now. It moaned with renewed urgency as it came closer. A big male.
There was only death in the world now. Living death that could walk and hunt and feast, and barbaric death from outlaws and madmen. Death from the ruins of a shattered civilization. Death from disease and festering wounds. Danny could leave this man to die, or do something to help him. This man whose grief had made him crazy and convinced him to rush one of the tribe's caretakers, whose panic had led him to drop the child he'd grabbed and drive away at top speed.
Danny's mind was racing. She was long past compassion for anyone who acted on behalf of chaos, even with the most personal of motives. But another man dead was another feeding for the Zeros. Another pair of hands that could fight back against the dead would be lost forever, or might become one of the enemy. "Get in the fucking car," she said. 2. The police special slewed between the undead that shuffled onto the roadway. They were ragged, dark, indistinct things, like the piers of an abandoned dock revealed by the tide. Skulls with wet rawhide stretched over them, yellow teeth in black, gaping mouths, eyes that stared out of deep sockets, pale, lightless eyes, butcher shop eyes. They moved like people in pain, stiff-limbed and lurching, twisting around to follow the vehicle. As soon as the last one went by, Danny hit the throttle. Those assholes back at the convoy weren't answering the radio, probably because Maria, who normally operated the communications system, was the one this escapee had punched when he went for the kid. But once again, the tribesmen had failed to follow protocol and keep communications open. Danny decided the prisoner's fate rested on whether Maria was badly injured. "Drink some water," Danny said. "No," her companion in the front seat said. It was a woman's voice, or nearly so. "You need to drink water or you'll shrivel up," Danny said, and pressed the plastic bottle into the gloved hands beside her. They were barreling along Interstate 70 through Kansas. Not too many shrubs grew through the pavement, and there were relatively few wrecks on this route. She could use some of the speed the police special was designed for. The wind whistled through the barbed wire zero catcher bolted to the front fender and ruffled Danny's choppy red hair beneath her smoky hat. "I made a mistake and I'm sorry. Can't you just let me go? Drop me off here, I don't mind," the prisoner said. "Please." He sounded afraid, more than he'd been before.
Danny glanced in the rearview mirror. The man in the back seat couldn't take his eyes off the apparition riding shotgun next to her. His fear was justified. They made a peculiar pair, she knew. Danny could pass for good-looking from a few feet away, but there were too many scars on her face for up-close work. Most people, however, found themselves staring at her left hand. It ended in a mess of cauliflower tissue where 3 fingers should have been. According to some crazy story that was going around, Danny had once chewed them off with her own teeth to get free of a wrecked car surrounded by Zeros.
Mutilations were not an uncommon sight in this time, however. Almost everyone had a couple of badly healed injuries or an untreated illness. It was a world of decaying teeth, greasy hair, and crooked scars. Even so, Danny's companion was the eye-catching one. It was understood among their fellow travelers that nobody was to ask about her, although Danny knew they talked about her when she wasn't around. Underneath a stained, shapeless muumuu with big flowers on it, the woman was bound from head to foot in dirty bandages, like a cartoon mummy. She was known simply as the leper, and she was untouchable in every sense of the word. Her presence was part of the price of being a member of the tribe. "Water," Danny repeated, not much interested in the man's feelings. "I don't want it," the leper said. "You need it. Your condition's getting worse." "So is yours." Danny glanced at the mirror again. The prisoner was looking at her now. If he hadn't figured out what the leper's condition was, he soon would. But he seemed like a bright guy, and scared to death. As if thinking the same thing, the leper turned her head to face him. The bones in her neck creaked audibly. Mike could see himself reflected in her sunglasses. She took a breath, speaking through the exhalation. "We all make mistakes," she said. "It's only human." 3. The radio opened up, grainy with static. It was a call from the White Whale, the immense motorhome that formed the center of the tribe's convoy. The voice on the radio was not Maria, but Patrick, another of Danny's original fellow survivors from the desperate hours after the undead first rose up in another life. "The kid's all right," Patrick said. "Nobody's hurt. Maria's got a shiner, that's it. Where have you been?" "Got the perp. Over." "We were calling you for the last half hour, just so you don't feel like you need to lecture us about communication when you get back," Patrick said. "It did cross my mind," Danny said. "Remember to say over when you're done speaking. Over." "Can't we pretend this is just a phone call? I really miss phone calls." So the child was okay. The failed kidnapper had that in his favor. Danny hated to admit it. She hated to admit anything, but she didn't have a clear answer as to what should be done with this guy. She would have to put it to a tribe vote or something. For now, she was silent with her thoughts. They drove on through a broken country. It was a year and a half since the onslaught of the undead plague. Lawns had become fields. Pavement was buckling and sprouting with grass and sapling trees, and everywhere there were vast swaths of scorched earth and burned-out towns where fires had raged unopposed. Cities were unapproachable, swarming with animated corpses. In contrast to the ruined places, the tribe would sometimes pass through deserted neighborhoods that appeared not to have suffered at all, overlook the untrimmed yards, and the houses were just as firm as the day they were built. The windows cast back reflections of the clouds, the roofs shed the weather, and the walls stood straight and clean. But here and there a front door hung open in a litter of leaves, or there was a rotten shape in the grass with one skeletal arm outflung. The tribe had been traversing the western states mostly, looking for supplies and safety. Neither one lasted very long, but they had seen a great deal of the changed America along the way. Of all the ruined things they saw, it was the cars that bothered Danny the most. She'd spent a long time fighting wars overseas and had seen ruins and fire and death. But in those foreign places, everybody took the bus or drove shabby little cars and dust-colored pickup trucks. Here, though, this was America. The cars were supposed to be bright and clean and shiny, neatly parked along streets and in driveways. To Danny, who had once owned and loved a flawless vintage cherry-red Mustang, cars were a projection of who Americans were. Now these once prized machines were scattered all over the countryside like discarded toys, many of them smashed and broken, doors sagging open. The vehicles had become colorful tombstones marking the death of an entire civilization.
And many of them sheltered the undead. It might have been some dim reptile memory of their past lives that drew the Zeros to wait there in the vehicles, dormant, their eyes and noses hung with webs of mucus.
Many of them had ceased to function and were now mummified in the driver's seats, truly dead. But others were simply biding their time, waiting like trapdoor spiders for prey to come along. The dead sat in the cars and waited and rotted, their sleepless graves made of steel. 4. No one but the scouts would have seen the child. The scouts had spent the last year looking for anything with 2 legs anywhere they found it. Their eyes had become specialized, like big game hunters, like fighter pilots. They saw things differently. They saw man shapes, no matter how well concealed. The boy was around 200 meters from the road, probably with a concealed bolt hole nearby so he didn't feel he had to run to escape. Topper saw him first and shouted to his wingmen Ernie and Con over the crackle of their big Harleys. "Stander, 3 o'clock." They had a system. The spotter would stop to destroy the thing if it was a Zero, or make contact if it was human. The others would continue on. Common-sense precautions, no leaving the paved surface in pursuit, radio circuits to be left open. If there was a problem, the other 2 scouts would double back and assist. Otherwise, they were backing up the primary mission, seeking safety and supplies. Ernie and Con kept on going. Topper swung his bike around and let the engine idle, his boots on the asphalt. It was a big, wind-swept nowhere, this place. There was a railway line off in the distance with a train sitting on the tracks. Just the cars, no engine, like a giant decapitated snake. Topper watched the child, and the child watched back. Topper had personally hand-dropped hundreds of Zeros since the crisis began. He had shot them, speared them, set them on fire, hacked them to pieces with axes, machetes, shovels, and meat cleavers. He'd run them over, blown them up, and bludgeoned them into ground hamburger with anything he could lift over his head. And yet dropping the kids still bothered him, like braining Casper the fucking man-eating ghost, as he'd explained it to Ernie. The things had been children once, and the tragedy of it lingered. They'd never grow any taller, get zits, or fall in love. They would just drift around the countryside like toy scarecrows until they found fresh meat or rotted off their feet. Children forever, and yet never again. Topper hated them. Usually the living shouted something right away when a scout stopped to check them out. They called for help or news or offered what they had to trade, if they had anything. This kid didn't say a word. He had the dirty pallor of a Zero, too, like sheet metal left out in the weather, and his clothes were falling off in blackened strips. Topper drew the rifle out of his saddlebag, scraped a couple of dead bugs off the barrel, and worked the action to get around into the chamber. The kid just stood there. Had to be a Zero. Topper sighted down the hunting scope on the rifle. It was a very nice piece of optics on a fine weapon. If you were a survivor, you could have the best of anything. The entire nation had become one vast, half-ruined superstore, with no employees to watch the stock. He trailed the scope along the grass and found the kid. The face jumped into view, big and clear. That always startled him. He checked the eyes, but they looked empty, like those of all Zeros. Then he saw the dog. Holy shit, the damn kid had a dog. Some kind of little Buster Brown mutant dog with its face smashed in and no tail, black and white with big spots. Frozen eels wriggled down Topper's spine. Jesus, was this a zombie dog? Had the disease crossed the species line? There was talk of that, some places they'd been. If it spread to animals, that would be the end of the remnants of mankind. Game over. People knew that much. He let the scope.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?